Okay, so with the brief amount of time that we've got, I'm going to skip over some details and stuff, but my goal here is to show you what's available for redistricting technology, a little bit about the data that's available for working with it, and then some additional follow-up resources. And this will include a demo, a brief demo here. So let me go ahead and advance my screen here. So redistricting data sources, let's start there. So of course, after the decennial census, last year's census, the Census Bureau is responsible for turning out all of that data. A subset of that data is what's known as the redistricting data, or the actual, it's often referred to as the PL 94-171 data. So you'll find that reference in a lot of the materials. And that's the data that was specified by Congress back in the mid-70s, I believe. It was designated that for congressional redistricting, everybody needs to use the census variables that are included in the PL 94-171 release. So this was to essentially ensure, or at least encourage, the use of appropriate data for redistricting. Under normal circumstances, non-pandemic years, that data usually starts coming out of the Census Bureau in January after the year of the census. Because of COVID last year and all the havoc that wreaked on the census last year, that data wasn't available until just recently. And in fact, it was supposed to be, the drop dead date was supposed to be September 30th, which was next week, but by some amazing work, they got the data out at the very end of August. So that the official census data is out now, and it's incorporated in the Esri technologies as appropriate. But that PL data is really all just the tabular data. And you have to join that with the geographic data, which is the Tiger file data, to build a complete a map-centric redistricting system. So understand that there's really two different data collections that you have to fuse together. And you might have other data that's used as a reference, either from ArcGIS Online or other things you may have local as shapefiles, and customer data. And I'm going to spend a second talking about customer data because this often gets involved in sort of the politics of redistricting. So politicians, the congressional requirement is that you're using the specified variables from the public law data for use in redistricting. But politicians often want to know things like voter history data. That's really important to them. They really want to know how do people vote in a particular precinct, and that influences greatly how they want to draw their boundaries. But that voter history data is not to be part of the definition of the legal districts. So oftentimes, the political parties want to bring in voter history data. They have to make their district stand alone based on the PL data, but they also want to use the influence that they can from voter history data. So just understand that in a large redistricting effort, there's often a lot of discussions, often the back channels or back rooms about voter history data. And you'll see aspects of how that gets incorporated at different parts in our technology. I do want to shout out to the Census Bureau. I think the Census Bureau is one of those federal agencies that doesn't get a lot of note very often, but they are one of the critical players in the development of new technology. If you look back at how computers got developed, it was funded by the Census Bureau back many, many years ago. So there's been a lot of really great innovations that the Census Bureau has done. They're in a lot of advanced things. They're kind of like the the DARPA research aspect, which focuses on military thing, which has gave us things like the internet. But a lot of what the Census Bureau has been doing over the last 150 years is really critical to a lot of the other data processing stuff. So I won't go into it anymore here, but just understand that the Census Bureau is a big player in technology. One of the things they did do back in the 80s and 90s is introduce the first seamless digital data layers for the United States, and that was in the form of the Tiger file. So a little bit of personal history. I was the lead technician for redistricting for the state of Oregon in 1990. We were the first, that was the first generation nationwide that had digital redistricting. And that was the way you had to do it, basically. So all the states back in 1990, we all had to learn how to do redistricting using computers. Previous to that, it was typically like in Oregon, they'd rent a gymnasium for 3 months every year and hire 20 people, and they would have stacks of paper maps out on the floor with crayons, and they would have, giant books of census tabular data, and they would also have adding machines. So it was quite a different thing in previous generations. But I was in a good spot in 1990 to get in on the ground floor of the first redistricting effort that was digital, and then about every 10 years I get pulled back into the whole process again. Previously, I was working with the state of Oregon. Now I work for Esri for the last nearly 30 years. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools real quick. There's a number of different technologies that Esri has that you can take advantage for doing districting, redistricting. So districting, redistricting is what everybody thinks of from the political redistricting aspect of things, but there are districting functions that are not political. So like if you're doing wildlife districts and things like that, and you can use aspects of this technology for doing those more non-political districting stuff. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the free plugin that we've had for a number of years. I don't know, 12, 15 years, that you can add into ArcMap. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Also about if you're an existing business analyst desktop user, you have districting tools in there. But I'll probably spend most of my time in actually doing the demo on the current web application that's there. So districting for ArcGIS, as I mentioned, was a free plugin available for ArcMap. We've upgraded it over the years. It's basically a toolbar that you download the extension and turn it on, and then you load your data into the system. It's a situation you got to bring your own, bring your own data. So you've got to go to the effort if you're doing political redistricting of loading the public law data and the Tiger files to do that kind of work. So the negatives about this option is one, that it's a dead end. ArcMap, the last version of ArcMap came out last August, a year ago, August actually, so 12, 13 months ago. And that was version 10.8, though we are doing and will have shortly a bug fix release, a .3 release for bug fixes, I think, coming out in November, but we're not doing any more development on it. It's kind of a dead end in terms of technology. You do, like I said, you have to import the data into it. And to be effective with this, you pretty much have to come into this being pretty ArcMap savvy in advance. And I'll show you where these things are on the website when we get towards the end, discussing resources. The other option is Business Analyst Desktop for ArcGIS Pro. So this is a extension to ArcGIS Pro. It's not typically a situation people would use for purely for doing political redistricting. It's because Business Analyst incorporates a lot of proprietary data sets that Esri has to pay a royalty on. It's a pretty expensive set of tools to use for redistricting. It's appropriate for economic development efforts where you need access to that proprietary sales data and stuff like that. But the territory tools that are in Business Analyst are quite useful for doing districting functionality. So if you happen to be a Business Analyst desktop user, this might be a good option. And you know, it like much of you know, professional level GIS, there is some effort to learn how to use those tools. It's not directly configured with the public law data, but because the public law data has recently been stood up in Living Atlas, if you're an Esri ArcGIS online user, you can get access to that redistricting data. So the main thing I want to talk about is the web technology. This is we introduced this back the last redistricting cycle. It comes in a couple different deployment models. One is the software as a service deployment, the SaaS deployment, and that's what I'm going to demo for you today. And it comes loaded with the data. It's pretty easy to learn and use, which can be important for political redistricting, because oftentimes the people who are doing the political redistricting are not going to be GIS savvy. So it needs to be a fairly easy way of doing redistricting. You also need to be able to share resulting plans in an online environment. It does cost $4,500 a year per user for a 1-year subscription. Typically, depends on the scale of your redistricting. The SaaS deployment option is really best for where if you have 1 or 2 users that you need are assigned to do redistricting. If you're going to scale out to having a large collection of contributors to a redistricting effort, like say at the state level, you're typically going to use one of the other deployment options, which I'll touch on here in a second. But they all of them use, all 3 different options for deployment use the same web application. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out, data used in the SaaS application, it's limited to the public law data in the Tiger files. It does not allow any way of bringing in outside like voter history data, at least not that can be used in the balancing equations for defining the district. Now we'll talk a little bit about that more in detail. So here's what the app looks like. It is a JavaScript 3 based technology. It's been updated, but it has not been migrated to JavaScript 4 yet. It's designed really to keep things as simple as possible. It will help you define districts. It will help you do the calculations, and it will help you do the report generation and sharing data out online. So we'll do a little demo on that after I get to the next slide here. So I mentioned that there's 3 different deployment options. There's the software as a solution option, which is what I'll demo, but that same application can be loaded into the Esri cloud managed services, or you can have it on premise. So if you want all of the technology to do on premise, you can do that as well. These 2 other, the managed cloud services and on-premise is really suitable kind of at the state level kind of deployment. These are basically, Esri will set the whole thing up for you. That's the managed cloud services, is all you interact with it through web applications. The on-premise is essentially setting up ArcGIS Enterprise on-premise and deploying in that environment. It is significantly more expensive than the $4,500 SaaS subscription. Typically, and it's based on the scale and population and how many people you're trying to support. The managed cloud services and the on-premise, it's going to start, in the $40,000 to $50,000 a year implementation and run up to 100,000 or so. The one thing that those two options have is that you can have a component that is used by the public actually participating in developing their own plans for redistricting and submitting those into the system. So that's one aspect of this technology, which is not available to the SaaS deployed technology. And the other thing is the managed cloud services and the on-premise solutions allow you to bring in other data sets for calculations of districts. And so this is where oftentimes voter history data would get incorporated, where you can't do that in a SaaS solution. All right, so at this point, let me demo. I'm going to go ahead and bring over the web interface here, and let's just take a look at the application. And what I'm doing here is actually we're going to create a plan here, and we're going to do we'll make a 3-district plan, and we're going to do this in Idaho. And we'll do Bannock County, since this seems appropriate, given where the university is. We'll say, we're going to use 2020 data. You can, which it defaults to. So it's using the most current data set, the stuff that was actually stood up about 2 weeks ago. But you can look at earlier sets of data as well. And we'll just go ahead and say next. And we'll take the colors default just to make it quick and easy. And then here, there are different data arrangements of the attributes used in the public law data. So there's a set of attribute variables. These are just a total population, total 18 and over, and so if you go scroll through all of these, there's different combinations of variables that you might want to include. So here we've got standard, and let's see. So I won't go into all of these detail, but it allows you to look at different attribute sets. But for purposes of a quick demo here, I'm just going to go with the universal data set and let's go done. And so we've got to give it a name. So we'll go Tech Talk and demo for Tech Talk. And today is the 23rd. All right, so it's what I've done here is I limited the data set that we're going to be working with to just this county. Now, obviously, if you're doing statewide, you tell it to do the whole statewide. It's basically looked at the total population, which is 87,018 for Bannock County. And then it's set up currently all of those census tracts here, which is what you're seeing, are unassigned. Now, one thing if you'll notice here when I zoom in, that as I zoom in, I get more census geometry. So we're looking at the county and the census tracts here previously, but as I get in here closer, it's actually revealing the census blocks and block groups, depending upon what level you're at. So let's go back to our out all the way here. And so we're going to create a district. So I'm going to go into create here, and I'm going to say for District 1, I want to start picking some census tracts. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that one. And you notice down below in the table at the below, we're starting to see the numbers shift. And so we'll make grab some more blocks here. And probably have to grab a bunch of different ones here. So you can see that I'm starting to gather up population, and we'll actually, let me zoom in here. And let's make another, well, let me gather a few more of these blocks. So let's pick up for District 1, we'll just pick a few other ones here. And then let's shift to number 2, and we'll pick up some blocks for District 2, obviously around Pocatello here. And starting to see those numbers shift, and it looks like I need to do some more tweaking. So let's go even in a little closer. And as I'm doing this, my geography is changing levels. So right now we're at, well, it's I have it automatically picking, it's now at block groups. So it's automatically selecting what level of census geography to work with. So if we zoom in here, so now it went from block groups to block. And if I go here and say, for District 2, we need some more blocks. Pick up some more of these, let's say that. And I've got a funky one there. We're still way below where we need to be. So let me grab a whole bunch actually at one time. And I managed to get an orphan block, some orphan blocks here. Let me gather those up too. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Excuse me for a sec. Oh, got those. So we've also got some District 1 stuff to fix up. So we'll go and hit these. But I think you get the idea how this works. District 1, oops, I actually want those in District 2. So we'll pick up those and those, and maybe zoom out just a little bit. And I've got, so District 1 and District 2 and their distributions, and we've got the rest of these unassigned, and I'm going to go ahead and grab those real quick and move on. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of those unassigned. Whoops, oh, I goofed that up. Anyway, so we've built some districts here, and we can start. Obviously, I need to tweak these to balance them a bit more, but for purposes of demonstrations here, we can start looking at some of the other report generations. So I'm way out of balance here on total population, but you can see there's all sorts of different tools for evaluating how things are at. You can even do things like compactness tests. So all of these are different recognized compactness tests. These are all pretty compact districts. So there's a bunch of tools that help you check the validity of the thing. And then there's a report generator that goes with it. So in here you can, again, tweak which variables you want to see. So for the standard population report, it makes, well, let's just give you a shot of this. So basically there's a whole reporting engine that goes with the technology too. Lastly on this is there's a bunch of different ways to share this out. You can, since it's built on top of ArcGIS Online, you can share these plans out for people to review. They can't edit them. You can share these with other users that have the redistricting application license that are part of your organization, and they can edit them if they need to. So you can set up a collaboration between multiple people to do that. So there's a bunch of different ways of sharing these things out. You can share them out even as just a spreadsheet if you want. So there's a whole mechanism for doing that. So with the remaining time that we've got here, let me hit on a few other things. So in terms of redistricting, let's see, what do we do? Let me go to the, so that free application, and I'll have links in the slides and I'll share the slides with Keith, but there's a bunch of descriptions on what the free application for ArcMap will do. There are some blog posts that the folks in the redistricting team put out regarding the data. Regarding data, if you're an ArcGIS Online user, you can get the data from the Living Atlas as services. If you want actual file-based data, you can get this from what I recommend is the Redistricting Data Hub. It's a free service. You do have to register to use it. And this is where you can get shapefiles that are already combined the public law data and the Tiger files together. So you basically, you log in, you tell them what data you want, and then you download it. Let's see, other, so showing that. Also on the Learn ArcGIS website, there is a whole bunch of tutorials. There's a really nice story map on redistricting in the United States. So you can go through and kind of hear the whole history and get exactly what they mean by gerrymandering and all that sort of stuff, sort of as background. So with the few minutes we've got left here, let's open it up for questions. And like I said, I will show the PowerPoint. And I do have some resources at the tail end of the PowerPoint that will take you to the links that most of those of which I showed. So any questions?